the longest candy cane in the world. Once upon a time, in the tiny town of Sweetville, there was a huge commotion. It all started when Mr. Snicker, the town's candy maker, announced his most ambitious project yet. He was going to create the longest candy cane in the world. He said it would be so long that it could stretch from Sweetville's bakery to the top of Lollipop Mountain, twisting and turning all the way. Kids from all over the town gathered around his candy shop to see the magic happen. Mr. Snicker rolled up his sleeves, adjusted his giant candy-striped hat, and got to work. He started with a single peppermint swirl, stretching it and stretching it until it was as long as a garden hose. Then he added more sugar and more stripes, twisting them together until the candy cane was as long as a bus. But Mr. Snicker didn't stop there. He kept going, and soon the candy cane was winding down the street like a sugary snake. By the end of the first week, the candy cane was so long that kids were playing jump rope with it on Main Street. By the end of the second week, it was so long that people used it as a bridge over the town's chocolate river. And by the end of the third week, it was so long that Sweetville's postman used it to deliver letters to towns he had never even heard of. One day, as the candy cane grew even longer, Mrs. Jellybean, the town's mayor, called a town meeting. "Mr. Snicker, this candy cane is taking over the whole town," she said, waving a red and white striped piece of the cane that had poked into her garden. But Mr. Snicker was determined. "Just a little longer," he promised. "We're almost there. I have to make it to the top of Lollipop Mountain." So, the townspeople decided to help. They brought out their bicycles, skateboards, and roller skates, using them to weave and roll the candy cane up the hills, around trees, and over streams. They had to dodge cows that tried to lick the candy and squirrels who were convinced it was a gigantic stripy nut. Finally, one windy Wednesday afternoon, with a crowd of cheering kids pushing and pulling, they reached the very top of Lollipop Mountain. The candy cane stretched out like a giant red and white striped ribbon across the town, wiggling in the breeze. But just as they celebrated, a gust of wind blew across the peak. The candy cane, now so long it had a mind of its own, started to wobble. It wiggled, waggled, and then, whoosh, it rolled down the mountain like the world's biggest slinky. Everyone chased after it, laughing as the candy cane tumbled down the hill, twirling around houses, looping around trees, and doing cartwheels over fences. The whole town turned into one gigantic, sugary, sticky playground. Kids were sliding down the candy cane, rolling in candy curls, and using peppermint pieces to build forts. By the time the candy cane finally stopped at the foot of Lollipop Mountain, it was in 100 swirly pieces, spread all over Sweetville. Mr. Snicker, out of breath but grinning from ear to ear, declared, "Well, I didn't make the longest candy cane in the world, but I sure made the most fun one." From then on, every year, the town of Sweetville celebrated Candy Cane Day, when kids would use the candy pieces to create new shapes, paths, and adventures, turning the whole town into a candy wonderland. And Mr. Snicker? He decided his next project would be the world's biggest bubblegum bubble, but that's another sticky story. And so, in Sweetville, the taste of peppermint always brought back memories of a town, a mountain, and a candy cane adventure that became legend. The end.